Hey guys, Spy here. Sorry if I sound horrible. I think I'm getting sick. Because I do not feel good, but I have to pre-record videos so I can take a nap. So let's see.
Kyle woke.
We are doing Kyle is
Kyle thought very carefully.
Christmas.
As Kyle started to leave his bed, something stopped him.
Okay, where's my mouse?
Maybe it was a smell in the air. Maybe it was the chill from outside, or maybe it was just pure luck. Kyle had been imbued with the spirit of Christmas.
Isn't it because of the mother
In an
elf
instant,
in him?
Kyle began to hear the dreams and wishes of every child in the world all at once. Kyle's newfound abilities were quite overwhelming. He clutched his head and screamed loudly. The voices did not stop. Kyle curled into a small ball and rocked back and forth. Not to be left alone, Kyle was gifted with a Christmas miracle. Small bumps began forming under his skin, pushing outwards. Kyle's skin began to stretch and tear, letting loose a small army of elves that had been growing in his stomach. The elves scattered around Kyle's apartment, foraging for anything remotely nutritious to feed on. Kyle burst an elf army. He had been chosen to become Santa Claus. Kyle decided that the best course of action was to fulfill his duties as Santa Claus. Kyle stepped out of bed, stray elves falling from various holes in his skin. Kyle must now continue his day as Santa Claus.
Okay. We were doing stuff in the locked door.
Kyle walked over to the strange door in the hallway, but found quickly that the door was locked from the inside. Kyle stretched out his hand, twisting it in its socket around and around. He sang a Christmas tune under his breath. The door swung open, letting Kyle through. Expecting a battle, Kyle grabbed the laser claymore.
And then we gift it to children.
Kyle realized it was wise to conduct his duties as Santa. Kyle could think of nothing better than to gather children around him and give them presents.
Which is a laser claymore.
Kyle supposed it was possible there were children in the nearby park, so he quickly walked over. Upon arriving, Kyle saw several families happily walking around and playing in the snow. Kyle called for the families to gather around him. The children bounced over expectantly.
Local celebrity pretending to be Santa gifted children at a park a laser claymore.
Kyle presented the children with a gift. Kyle produced the laser claymore and wordlessly handed it to the closest child. The child's eyes widened in excitement, and a wondrous grin crossed his face. Before anyone could react, the child began swinging wildly with both arms. The child's parents made an attempt to grab the child, but he quickly ran in the opposite direction, still swinging. As the child ran through the park, the claymore cut through benches, trees, and the ground itself. A path of destruction was formed. The child continued to run at full speed, entering the rest of the city. He reached the side of a building, but did not stop. Through his wild swings, the claymore cut a hole through the wall. Within minutes, the city was in a panic as a small child systematically crashed in and out of every building he could. The rampage continued as the city residents looked on helplessly, accepting that this would be the end of their livelihood. Soon there was no area in the city left unmarred. Destruction was rampant. Traffic was at a standstill. Buildings toppled to the ground. The power grid was destroyed. The city was in shambles. Kyle was unsure how to react. He eventually looked at the child's parents. They were giving him a stern and slightly irritated look. "Presents are what you make of them," he said. "Your child is pure evil." Kyle walked away. feeling a little sheepish. The destruction of the city brought about a new wave of apocalypse tourism like nobody had seen before. The city's economy flourished. Kyle City became a travel hotspot for the rest of the world. But somehow, Kyle felt a little unfulfilled. He had tried to do something lovely for the children, yes, and the city economy was flourishing. But had he really helped anyone? Kyle continued through the next few weeks, picking through the rubble on the sidewalks and feeling restless. Soon, the city was rebuilt with the income from the tourists. Shiny, new buildings were erected. Restaurants opened. Kyle watched the city regrow. He felt a strange pang in his stomach. Kyle was on the brink of a new chapter in his life.
That's terrifying. Okay. Start again. Skip. We change jobs.
Kyle
to
thought very carefully.
Christmas. We skip.
Kyle.
We start the day. I want to dress up as Santa as I do this.
Kyle.
Back. Exit. Leave. Santa duties.
Kyle.
Give presents.
Kyle supposed it was possible. Kyle presented.
Wisdom.
Children, it is time to listen to Santa, said Kyle. The children leaned in eagerly. I have lived a long and full life, said Kyle, and seen many things no man could imagine. From the many experiences I've had and people I've met, I feel qualified to give you this piece of wisdom. Kyle coughed into his hand and took a deep breath. Don't feed your girlfriend sea monkeys on the first date. There may not be a second.
What? Who would agree to a second date after that?
The children stared at Kyle blankly. Kyle screamed and began tearing at his stomach. More elves were on their way out.
Oh, good way to traumatize a child.
In a sudden explosion, elves flew out of Kyle's skin, covering the group in hungry, crawling elf flesh. The parents were whipped into a frenzy of frantically pulling elves off their children and themselves. The elves, suddenly free and ravenous, bit at the parents' hands with their teeth and screamed at the top of their lungs. Kyle, uncomfortable with the situation, decided to leave. On his way home, Kyle greeted everyone he passed. It had been a lovely evening. Inside his door, he stopped and smiled. Kyle knew he had done something wonderful for the children in his community.
Yes, traumatize them.
Kyle's first decision of the morning was made wisely.
Meant that.
Kyle.
Okay.
Kyle,
We're
a
gonna
middle-aged
give them
woman.
Gabby.
Kyle realized it was one.
Gabby.
Kyle bugged his eyes and started punching his stomach repeatedly. In a loud and sudden moment, Gabby was gifted to the children. Here, children, said Kyle, gasping. Is my neighbor Gabby. Gabby looked around, equal parts confused and irritated. The parents of the children collectively started screaming. Still yourselves, said Kyle. Gabby is a gift, not an enemy.
Depends.
Kyle, I am not a thing, said Gabby. You need to stop doing this. Kyle looked hurt. Gabby, you're very pleasant, and I want to share you with the world. What on earth just happened? Where did she come from? The parents continued to be horrified. It's fine, everyone, said Kyle. This is my neighbor. And then everybody understood. Oh, I see now, said one parent. Well, kids, you'd better gather her up, because we need to go. The children formed a small line and hoisted Gabby over their heads. They slowly departed from the park, carrying her along. Kyle, don't forget your rent! The landlord was asking about it today! Yelled Gabby as she was carried away. Kyle grunted, gave a small nod, and walked away. Later that night, Kyle heard Gabby's front door slam and wondered why she had been returned.
Interesting.
Kyle
Change,
thought very
Christmas,
as
skip,
Kyle
open the closet, choose an outfit,
deci-
become Santa, exit the hallway, leave apartment, go on Santa
Kyle-
duties, give
Ky-
presents, but give nothing this time.
Because Kyle had not bothered to actually bring anything to give the children, he had nothing to give them. Sorry, kiddos, he said. You're not getting any presents today. Kyle let out a long, meaningful laugh. The children looked at Kyle with faces of understanding. We understand, Santa, one said. It's hard to bring gifts to every child in the world. Instead, we will gift ourselves your soul. The child's mouth opened to an uncomfortable size, and his eyes turned pitch black. He began to inhale. Kyle's soul began to fall from his body and be consumed by the child, but Kyle knew what to do. Kyle began spewing elves out of his mouth into the soul-rending maw of the child. One by one, the elves disappeared, feeding a small amount of what Kyle's soul could feed. After many hours, Kyle had stuffed the child completely full of elves. There was no more room for his soul to be taken. Kyle hoisted the fat and groaning child off the ground and placed him in the arms of his parents. Continue to feed him small animals for the rest of his life so he is too full to move or think, said Kyle. Then the world will be safe. Kyle skipped away gleefully, knowing he had done a wonderful thing for the city. That evening, Kyle thought back to the events of the day. He remembered that he had brought no gifts for the children. But then Kyle realized that he had gifted the children something. He had given them safety. He had given them a future. Kyle went to sleep grinning. He felt very fulfilled. Kyle had given the best gift ever.
Okay.
As Kyle started, Kyle must now continue his day as Santa.
And we're gonna finally go and do spread Christmas cheer.
Kyle knew that one of his duties as Santa must be to spread Christmas cheer. Kyle skipped down the street merrily. As he met others walking along the sidewalk, he smiled. Surely they would feel Christmas cheer. After several streets, Kyle stopped skipping. Nobody had burst into Christmas song. Nobody had wished him a Merry Christmas. Nobody had even smiled. Kyle realized he would need to spread Christmas cheer more aggressively. Kyle walked up to a young couple chatting and laughing amongst themselves. He grabbed the woman by the shoulders and shook her lightly. Listen to me, he screamed. It's Christmas time! The couple left quickly. Kyle, not dissuaded, ran into the street, stopping a car with his hands. It's Christmas! Tell your family I love them! Kyle shouted, banging his fists on the car hood. Kyle's method still proved ineffective. He realized that if he were to be a proper Santa, he must not hold back. Kyle started slamming his forehead into the car hood repeatedly, flailing his arms in the air. It is time for presents! Kyle emphasized each word with percussion from his face. Suddenly, Kyle was blessed with another Christmas miracle. Kyle's neck shot directly upwards, throwing his mouth towards the sky. Slowly, painfully, a live reindeer began to emerge from his throat.
Ouch.
In fact, it was not one reindeer, it was several. Kyle began to run around, arms waving, desperately trying to find a way of dislodging the animals emerging from him. In a sudden, forceful moment, reindeer after reindeer explosively shot out of Kyle's mouth. The stream did not stop there. Every orifice of Kyle's face began shooting wrapped presents of all sizes in every direction. Kyle, unaware of what to do, spun in all directions and screamed. Like doves, the presents flew far into the air, landing into the laps of the children of the world. Within a period of minutes, Kyle had managed to give the world his Santa-ly gifts. Eventually, the present spewing stopped. Kyle fell to the ground. He crawled his way back to his apartment and lay down. Kyle did not remember about his interview with Rachel.
That just sounded painful.
Kyle thought very... As Kyle must now continue his day as Santa Claus. Kyle winced as he realized he would probably need to bring some elves along. Kyle grabbed a nearby bag. He started to crawl around, snatching up elves left and right and chucking them inside. Soon, Kyle's bag was mostly full of elves. Kyle appropriately... Kyle realized it was wise to conduct his duties as Santa.
And now we'll release the elves.
Kyle dumped his bag of elves onto the ground. The elves silently looked around them, stunned by the sudden change of environment. The silence did not last long. The elves began tearing about, screaming Christmas carols and looking for food. Ravenously, they devoured every crumb, piece of trash, and bit of roadkill they could find on Kyle's street. It was not nearly enough to satisfy them. They began to branch out to nearby streets. The elves could not be satiated. They began to swipe food out of the hands of nearby restaurant goers. Like a flood, the elves took over Kyle's city. Houses were broken into, streets were blocked. Within minutes, there wasn't a scrap of food left in the city. Driven by a hunger lust, the elves started gnawing their way through walls, devouring buildings. The government's defense measures were brought in to attempt to stop the wave of elves. In a flurry of rage, the elves launched themselves directly towards their enemy. There was a grand clash of bullets and teeth. The elves clamped themselves firmly onto the soldiers. Hunks of metal and bulletproof jackets were torn asunder by the elf mouths. The army's equipment and weapons were systematically swallowed.
Sorry guys, I'm trying to make room on my desk for something.
There was nothing left to stop the elves from consuming every last material from the earth.
And my brain is fried.
Nothing except Kyle himself. Kyle planted himself in front of the elf mob menacingly. The elves launched themselves into the air, flying at Kyle teeth first and screaming Christmas cheer. With cat-like speed, he started grabbing elves out of the air and shoving them into his mouth. Kyle swallowed elves at a frightening pace. He grabbed them with both hands from his legs as they tried to climb up. Kyle's stomach began to bulge with elf mass, but he did not slow down. As suddenly as it had started, the flurry of elves ended. Kyle had swallowed them all.
Where's my mouse?
Kyle became a national icon of Homeland Defense. The world began to refer to Kyle among the great history figures of humanity. Kyle was preemptively awarded the next 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. His name became synonymous with safety and joy.
Wasn't he the one who originally released them in the first place?
Kyle spent the next few days hunched over the toilet, hacking elves out one by one and flushing them into the sewer. The elves formed an underground society in the belly of the city, living happily in peace away from humanity.
Wandercursor. Okay. Okay. This is actually surprisingly short. I would have thought there's more, but that is Kyle is detective in there, which is gonna be really soon in October because we're recording this in advance. Because it's just 2 episodes of Christmas stuff, and that's fine for December. But yeah, if you guys like Kyle, if you guys liked Kyle as Santa, hit that like button to see more of my content. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Hit whatever other buttons are down there. In the description will links my page on Twitch, Twitter, merch stores, all that fun jazz, along with the game store page. And I think this is technically, since I'm doing this out of order, this is technically the end of Kyle as Santa. That's weird. The nightmare is over. For you guys, at least, not for me. Nope, because I'm doing this. Oh my god, why are there so many things for that? Oh god. Well, the nightmare of Kyle is over for you guys, not for me, sadly. And I'll see you guys in the next video. It really wants to. Bye, guys. Boo.